If you've ever looked at old school microphones, you're sure to recognize the Shure Unidyne series. Originally produced in 1939, the Unidynes have become iconic in the decades since, or should I say, miconic. While there are a lot of retro style microphones out there, these are the originals, so let's take a look at them and see what the difference is. Why are there two of them? Right away, I want to point out that this is not a sponsored video, and I did pay full price for both of these microphones with my own money, and I'm not returning them or anything like that. And the reason for that is I was interested in looking for an old school style microphone, and I had seen these types of microphones around, but I didn't know much about them. And so I went down the whole rabbit hole of learning about the Shure Unidyne series, which was fascinating and really made me fall in love with them. But the part where I got confused is that there are currently two predominantly available models of the Unidyne series. There's the 55 SH Series 2, this guy right here, and then the Super 55 over here. They look almost identical, but there is a pretty big difference between them. So I'm not only going to explain about the microphones, but I'm also going to explain why I got them, how I use them, and then we'll also do some sound comparisons with and without a Cloudlifter, all through the Rodecaster, and then at the end we'll kind of talk about where these fit in terms of other microphones. So if you're totally unfamiliar with these microphones and you search them up, you'll notice there are these two right here, and right off the bat, the biggest difference is one is blue, or it has blue foam pop filter, and the other one has a gray pop filter, kind of a more classic style. Immediately, because I am who I am, my mind went to the blue one because it blew me away, and I was like, that's the microphone that I want. But then I was like, but wait, does the blue mean something? And the answer is yes, it does. Basically, this microphone has the same capsule for the most part as the Beta 58 from Shure. And what that means is it's a super cardioid pickup pattern. Whereas this microphone, the 55 SH2, is just a regular cardioid pickup pattern. They're both dynamic microphones. They don't require phantom power or anything like that to work. What I'm going to call the Classic 55 does have an on-off switch, and the Super 55 doesn't, which was actually something that led me towards this because I know how fidgety I am, and I can imagine myself doing a podcast or a stream and just sort of playing around and turning off the button without realizing it. After having this microphone, I actually kind of like the button a lot, so it's a cool feature. The Classic 55 is about $180. The Super 55 is about $250. So it is more expensive. But just because it's more expensive, has a special name, and comes in a special color, doesn't mean that it's the better microphone. And that's something I had to figure out while doing research on these microphones. It's just sort of what pickup pattern do you want? Do you want a classic cardioid or do you want a super cardioid? In this context, you can think of super cardioid as like hyper cardioid. So whereas this microphone will kind of pick up things in a standard pickup pattern, this one is much more directional, sort of right in front of the microphone, which is great if you need to not pick up sound around the microphone. And dynamic microphones in general are better if you're in a less than ideal acoustic environment or you're trying to block out some sounds that surround you and it doesn't sound good. So before we go too much further, let's jump in and do some sound tests and some sound comparisons while I tell you more about these microphones. Right now I'm using the Rode VideoMic NTG, but we'll switch over to the 55 SH Series 2, what I'm calling the Classic 55 right now. And this is the Classic 55. Both of these microphones, I should mention, are being run through the Rodecaster Pro with absolutely no processing of any kind. They are being run through a Cloudlifter, and the gain on both channels is set to plus 35. So this is the Classic 55. And then this right here is the Super 55. You might notice that my voice is a little bit louder right away, and that is one of the qualities of the Super 55, is it's supposed to boost some of the mid-range. I really like it. This has kind of become my main microphone for work and stuff, which is so silly and ridiculous, but I absolutely love it. And then again, jumping back over here to the 55 SH, you can definitely hear a bit of a difference in sound quality. Now, while both of these microphones look like the classic Unidyne series microphone, they were actually both released in 2009, so they're a semi-recent update. I guess 2009 was like a long time ago now, but they're In the world of Shure microphones, which is like almost a century, they're more on the recent end of things. And I should mention too, when it comes to putting these on a stand, they're really not ideal for a boom arm because their XLR port is right next to the microphone input, and they're really made to be on a classic mic stand, kind of like, the tall version of these ones right here. You can mount it to boom arms, and that's what I've been doing a lot, but I had to get these little adapters from Shure. They're just extension tubes, so that way there's plenty of room for the microphone to stick out with the cable. And as stage and performance microphones, these are supposed to have built-in shock mounts. These are on tabletop stands, so if I tap the desk, that's kind of how much that picks up. If I type on my keyboard, oh God, what did I do? Here's on the Super 55, tapping on the desk, typing on the keyboard. And as far as handling the microphone, if I pick it up on the mic stand, this is sort of how it picks up sound. If I just pick up the microphone itself, it doesn't have a ton of handling noise. It's actually pretty good. And the Classic 55 is sort of the same thing. If you were to hold it, it doesn't pick up a ton of sound. What I should also mention is, since I just got my grubby hands all over these microphones, I love that they are a brushed metal finish because fingerprints don't show up, which is great. That means they look sharp all the time. Actually, they look smooth because they're very round, but they look sharp on screen all the time. And just for frame of reference, here's a plosive test. These definitely do tend to pick up plosive, so I try to talk across the front of the microphone. Peter Piper pitched a podcast. That's the Classic 55. And then on the Super 55, Peter Piper pitched a podcast. You can definitely hear some of those plosives. It would be taken care of if you used a pop filter. Peter Piper pitched a podcast. But in general, I think these are both really great sounding mics. I think they're a ton of fun to use. The thing that I'd really love to try out now is that directional pickup pattern. So let's start with the Classic 55, since it's got the more traditional pickup pattern. If I'm in front of the microphone, speaking directly into it, this is what it sounds like. And then as I turn it, you can sort of hear how it stops picking things up all the way to the back of the microphone and then back to the front of it. So pretty much sounds the same anywhere in like this range from the front. It's almost like it doesn't matter what direction it's facing. And then again to the side, it will go away. Where that should change then is with the Super 55, since it's a super cardioid pickup pattern. As soon as I turn it, you should start to notice doesn't take very much off-axis rotation, that sounds so scientific, for it to stop picking me up. And if I bring it back, then here we go, right into the front of that microphone. It sounds crisp, and then as soon as I'm kind of off-axis, it sort of goes away. I'm sorry if there's handling noise from this mic stand. I know that's not a super scientific test, so I do have my assistant here to help me with a more scientific version. The wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man, which is very loud. And so this is me, well, here. If I'm speaking in the direction of him, that's what that sounds like. And if I speak away, now you can hear how the Classic 55 is rejecting sound from the wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man. And now if we bring in the Super 55 and I point it over here, you can hear what it sounds like when we're in that direction. And then off to the side, you can kind of hear how it's rejecting that sound. And if it's behind me there, let's try a comparison between the two of them. Put this guy right here and put these guys right here. This is very scientific, by the way. So this is the Super 55 and how it's rejecting sound from the motor over here. And this is the Classic 55 and how it's rejecting sound. If I put it over on the side of the microphone, this is what that sounds like. If I put it on the side of the microphone, this is what that sounds like. So let's look more at the levels of these microphones. Right now, as I mentioned, I am running through the Rodecaster Pro with no processing, but we are going through the Cloudlifter. So let's switch to not using the Cloudlifter. This is the Super 55 with the Cloudlifter. This is the Classic 55 with the Cloudlifter. And this is the Classic 55 without the Cloudlifter. And this is the Super 55 without the Cloudlifter. I didn't change any of the levels. If I boost the level up though, so I have this maxed out on the Rodecaster Pro and the volume is significantly less than it was before when it was just a little bit over halfway. And same goes over here. This is maxed out and it's a little bit lower than the Super 55. So I don't know that you need a Cloudlifter with either of these microphones. It depends on how loud you speak or how close you speak to it or how powerful your your preamp is. With the Rodecaster Pro, you could definitely get away without it. But if you're able to use a Cloudlifter, then I think it will bring a lot more into the microphone. So again, this is the Super 55 without the Cloudlifter. This is the Classic 55 without the Cloudlifter. And oh my gosh. And at that same level, here's the Classic 55 with the Cloudlifter. And here's the Super 55 with the Cloudlifter. So if I have the volume all the way up, I can be way back here and still get a plenty loud signal from the Super 55, but we don't need to blow anybody's eardrums out, so we'll lower that back down. There are a couple other interesting features too about these microphones. I should point out that while mounting them can be a little tricky on anything like a boom arm, they are pretty versatile because they can tilt back so far and tilt forward so far. So you actually do have a lot of options in terms of angling the microphone for your needs. And this attachment or this screw, this joint right here, is supposed to be self-tightening, which means it always stays very firmly in whichever position you put it, but it's not difficult to move either. So with this extension tube, then I can put the Super 55 or the regular 55 on my PSA-1. Some of the other boom arms, you might be able to then tilt it up straight and kind of have that look, but the PSA-1 I can't. I could do it from the top like that, so that's always an option. And so this is how I've been using the Super 55 for the most part for all my classes and some streams and stuff. And it's really fun. I like this because it's out of the way. There's nothing on the desk as I'm doing my work. There's nothing blocking my computer screen. It does definitely look a little goofy. It's not the coolest way to use this microphone, just sticking out the side like this. But I've actually gotten a ton of great compliments from it. It's like one of the first things that people have been noticing in streams lately. So it sounds good, it looks good, it's super fun to use. Now I do have two thoughts in closing. So first, I want to address everybody who, whenever I use a microphone that's not a PodMic, I get a lot of questions and comments, and I understand that because I'm a big fan of the PodMic, and I know a lot of people have decided to purchase their PodMics based on my recommendation. And so I do always feel a little strange if then I'm using a different microphone, but I really like microphones and they're really fun to try out different ones. I will say, in the $100 price range for podcast streaming vocals, I still think the PodMic is the best. It sounds good, it looks good, it's super durable, super duper durable, and it also has, you know, the yoke that's mounted right on there, so it's super easy to position. You don't have to do any of this silliness right here. Even something like an SM58, which is an amazing sounding $100 microphone. I don't really like the traditional mic clips where you have to like snap the microphone in and it sometimes slides back and forth or can even pop out. This is just so much more permanent and firm. So for $100, PodMic, still the way to go. But if you're willing to go beyond that $100 price range, you do have other options that open up. And I think something you can have a lot of fun doing is if you're looking for a microphone, even at any price range, look at the popular options because they are probably popular for a reason. There's also a ton of other microphones in and around and below that price range. And if you just start searching for something, you might find something that for you looks really neat, sounds really neat, is super fun to use. Maybe it suits your voice really well as compared to some other microphones. Choosing a microphone can be a surprisingly personal experience. And so while it is important to do your research and see, you know, what other people recommend, you also got to stick with your gut and your preferences. I really love these. In fact, these are actually great microphones, these Unidynes, to bring with you to dinner because then Unidyne in style.